In this video, we'll be going over some of the core class features in D&D 5e, and picking out some of the best ones that either see a lot of play at the table, or are just generally very powerful. And for the purposes of this list, we'll be excluding things like Spellcasting and Extra Attacks, as even though they are technically listed as class features, these two in particular feel like gimmes in terms of usefulness. Starting things off at number 10, we have Magical Secrets. This is a class feature that's given to bards upon hitting level 10, and allows them to choose 2 spells of any spell list to learn as long as they are spells that you're able to cast at that time, while also learning 2 additional spells at 14th and 18th level. Now, what makes this class feature so amazing is the fact that it allows you to sprinkle some variety into your bard in some unique ways. There are over 500 spells in the game, and almost 400 of those are 5th level and below, giving you so many options to choose from to fit whatever build or theme you're going for. You could have access to Fireball for extra damage and a large AoE option, or maybe even Conjure Animals if you wanted to add some minions to your gameplay style. Bless is a good spell if you want to continue the theme of support, as it allows your party members to hit better and pass saving throws they might struggle with. On the flip side, Bane is good as an offensive support option, as it can cause your enemies to miss their attacks while making it easier for them to fail saving throws. There is no best spell you can take with this feature, since the best spells heavily depend on personal preference and what you seek to accomplish as your bard more than anything else. And even though this list won't necessarily go into subclasses, it is worth noting that Magical Secrets can be accessed a little bit earlier if you're playing as the Lore subclass, which can grant them an additional 2 spells to learn at 6th level as well. Regardless, the versatile nature of Magical Secrets definitely makes this feature worth having on this list, and is easily regarded as one of the bard's most powerful features. But the reason this feature only sits at number 10 on this list is because, while being able to learn a total of 6 additional spells over the course of the campaign is a huge boon, it is sort of a one and done deal each time, and does nothing else but teach you spells you otherwise wouldn't be able to know, while also becoming available a bit late in the game. And while this does mean you get to pick up amazingly overpowered spells like Wish or Meteor Swarm by level 18, most tables generally don't reach these higher tiers of play, so you are more likely only going to make use out of the 10th and 14th level version of Magical Secrets. But even with all of these downsides, Magical Secrets functions perfectly as a way of fulfilling whatever niche you want your bard to fill by either reinforcing something that your party lacks, like damage, or doubling down on flavor and roleplay options to help enhance your experience as a mischievous bard or an entertainer. And at number 9, we have Diamond Soul. This is a monk feature that they learn at 14th level and grants you proficiency in all saving throws. In addition, whenever you fail a saving throw, you can spend 1 key point to re-roll it and take the second result. This is a very simple feature that just makes it easier for you to survive incoming spells or effects that might otherwise be detrimental to you. While you're already proficient in strength and dexterity saving throws, being able to more easily resist the effects of something like fear or incapacitation is a very strong ability to have, especially since this portion of the feature is always on no matter what. And being able to spend 1 key point in order to reroll a failed save just makes this feature even better. However, that's really all it does, which isn't bad in itself. But because you only learn this at level 14, you aren't going to have very many opportunities to use it, since you'll be learning this feature towards the back end of tier 3 play, which falls between levels 11 and 16, and usually where campaigns begin to wind down. Fortunately, the general benefit of this feature is the reason why Diamond Soul has a place on this list despite only being obtainable so late in the campaign. Having proficiency in every saving throw is just that valuable, even at the highest tiers of play, since you don't have to worry as much about being hit with a Dominate Person or a Flame Strike, making this feature always useful from the moment you obtain it to the moment your campaign finally ends. And at number 8, we have Stunning Strike. This is another class feature for monks that's learned upon reaching level 5. It allows you to spend 1 key point whenever you hit with a melee weapon attack in order to attempt to stun a creature until the end of your next turn by making them roll a Constitution saving throw. A stunned creature is considered incapacitated, meaning it can't take any actions or reactions. The stunned creature also cannot move and has trouble speaking, automatically fails strength and dexterity saving throws, and attack rolls against the stunned creature are made with advantage. This is basically the bread and butter of how most monks will fight in combat, as stun is an amazing condition to afflict which basically skips the affected creature's next turn while making them easier for you and your party members to land hits on. The biggest downside of this, however, is the fact that it targets a creature's constitution stat, which is considered the worst stat to target due to the fact that so many creatures have such high constitution scores. Fortunately, this is sort of made up by the fact that there's no limit in how many times a turn you can use Stunning Strike, so as long as you have the key points to back them up. So if you attack twice for your action, you can spend 1 key point to follow that up with Flurry of Blows to make 2 more unarmed attacks as a bonus action, and then spend another key point per attack you land in order to attempt a Stunning Strike for a total of 4 attempts in a single turn. However, in most cases, you might not need to spend that many key points to land the stun, and even if you don't, it might be better to consider withholding future Stunning Strikes for other creatures, since key points are a limited resource that can only be restored upon finishing a short or long rest. You can also use Stunning Strike as a way to force an enemy spellcaster to drop concentration, since a creature that's incapacitated automatically drops concentration of their spells without the need for a concentration check, and because spellcasters almost consistently have lower constitution scores than other creatures. But having access to the ability to even potentially make enemies miss their turns at such an early level is the main reason why this feature even makes this list in the first place, even if it only ticks number 8 spot. And at number 7, we have Wild Shape. This is a second level class feature that druids learn and normally allows you to use your action in order to shift into a bear twice per short or long rest. You stay in this form for a number of hours equal to half your druid level, and the type of creature you can turn into is determined by the Beast Shapes table. At second level, you can change it to a creature whose challenge rating is up to 1/4 and cannot possess a flying or swim speed. 4th level druids can shift into a CR 1/2 creature and now has the no swim speed restriction lifted. And at 8th level, you can transform into a creature of up to 1 CR, regardless of flying or swim speed it possesses. There are a lot of ways to use Wild Shape, many of which pertain to scouting and traversing smaller areas that you normally wouldn't be able to outside of combat, and creating a temporary buffer of health while you're in combat. This is because whenever you Wild Shape into a creature, you also possess some of those creatures' stats, including their hit points and hit die. And if your hit points ever drop to 0 while Wild Shape, you simply revert back to your normal form and take any remaining damage from your beast form that you didn't take. Also, if you're maintaining a spell which requires concentration, such as Call Lightning, you can maintain that concentration while in your Wild Shape form, as long as you cast the spell before doing so, since Wild Shape prevents you from casting spells altogether. And if you're maintaining a spell that allows you to use an action or bonus action to reproduce an effect of a spell, such as with Call Lightning or Sunbeam, you are allowed to do so even while you're Wild Shaped. You're also able to retain the benefits of your race, class, and other features that your form is physically capable of doing so. This can see some niche but effective uses if you're multi-classing outside of Druid and allows you to retain class features that might make your beast form a little better. For example, at first level, monks learn the unarmed defense feature, which allows you to calculate your armor class as 10 plus your dexterity modifier plus your wisdom, as opposed to the standard AC calculation of 10 plus your dex, which can make some of the beast forms of Wild Shapes have more AC than they normally would, making them a little bit harder to hit since wisdom also happens to be the druid's main stat, so it would naturally be on the higher side. And while not wholly relevant, it is also worth noting that some subclasses even change how you use Wild Shape while still maintaining the way to use it normally. Circle the Star Druids are able to expend a charge of Wild Shape in order to, as a bonus action, transform into a starry form, which grants you different benefits depending on what form you take. In your Archer form, you can deal 1d8 plus your Wisdom modifier and Radiant damage as a bonus action to a creature within 60 feet of you. Your Chalice form allows you to heal a creature within 30 feet of you for 1d8 plus your Wisdom modifier whenever you cast a spell which restores hit points to a creature. And your Dragon form allows you to treat any roll of 9 or lower on a d20 as a 10 whenever you make an Intelligence or Wisdom check, or Constitution saving throw to maintain concentration on a spell. Wildfire Druids can also expend a use of Wild Shape in order to summon a Wildfire Spirit, which provides a Druid with some additional benefits as they level up. And then there's Circle of the Moon Druids, which get a completely upgraded version of the Wild Shape feature by allowing them to shift into a creature with a higher CR than they normally would, while making Wild Shape into a bonus action, which comes with the benefits of making an absolute tank of a build. The amount of flexibility and ways to have this feature modified in ways other class features normally don't is why this class feature is definitely worth talking about for this list. And at number 6, we have the Spell Storing item. This 11th level Artificer feature allows you to, after finishing a long rest, basically replicate the effects of the Spell Storing Ring magical item by allowing you to store spells from the Artificer spell list inside a simple or martial weapon or spell focus, which can later be used by whomever this item is given to. However, there are some restrictions on how this class feature can be used compared to the actual magic items it's based on. For starters, you can only store one spell inside the selected item, whereas Spell Storing Ring allows you to store any number of spells as long as those total levels of spells equals 5. So you can store 3 first level spells and 1 second level spell, for instance. The second thing about this class feature is that you can only store a first or second level spell which requires a cost of 1 action to cast. Lastly, a creature that holds a designated item is able to cast the spell stored within it as an action a number of times equal to twice your intelligence modifier, where this spell will no longer be stored. And for any table that's ever used a Spell Storing Ring, they would probably tell you how good this magical item is, because of how many different kinds of spells you can store in it. For example, you can give your fighter a Spell Storing Ring with 5 castings of the shield spell as an emergency get out of jail free card by increasing their AC by an extra 5 points, as a reaction whenever they would get hit until the start of their next turn. Or you can give your healer a few extra castings of Healing Word, which is just more resources your healer has at their disposal, or even give it to your ranger or wizard so they can also have a way to do some light healing. However, because Spell Storing Item only allows you to store spells that cost 1 action, you kind of can't do any of the aforementioned shenanigans like you would be able to with a Spell Storing Ring. However, you can still cast spells such as Heat Metal, which is a very strong second level spell that can deal a guaranteed 2d8 fire damage against a creature that isn't within physical contact of a piece of manufactured metal, such as metal armor or a sword. while forcing them to take 2d8 fire damage every subsequent turn using your bonus action if they manage to hold on to whatever object is being currently affected by heat metal. And if the creature doesn't drop the object, either by choice or by failing a Constitution saving throw, then they have disadvantage on their attack rolls and ability checks until the start of their next turn. And if they're wearing metal armor, then they don't really get a choice in the matter, since taking off armor takes 1 minute for medium armor and 5 minutes for heavy armor. And usually this spell is normally available through the Artificer, Bard, and Druid spell list, so being able to give your fighter or paladin a way to cast a spell can be really powerful, especially since you yourself can also cast it. In a way, this class feature allows you to maintain concentration on 2 spells through the use of another party member if you really want to look at it that way. Giving your ranger access to Fairy Fire while you cast Web can make for some really strong synergies, as you'll be restraining creatures while your ranger can make creatures easier to hit. You can also store Cure Wounds inside the item and have free castings of Cure Wounds for your ranger if they ever need some extra healing or find themselves needing to deliver some emergency healing to a downed ally. But the reason this class feature isn't any higher on this list is mainly because the amount of spells you can really use with this is kind of limited, especially if you're going to be giving this to a party member. You can only choose from the Artificer spell list and can only pick spells that cost an action, which limits the list even further. And while only being able to cast a 1st and 2nd level spell can be seen as a downside, since by the time you reach 11th level, most spellcasters would already be casting 6th level spells, it's important to consider the fact that Artificers are half casters, meaning they don't get as many spells nor do they learn as many as full casters. So by 11th level, they'll only have access to 3rd level spells. This is also what makes this class feature so good for them, because they now have more castings of the low level spells as well. However, having access to a pseudo Ringo spell storing is definitely nothing to scoff at when it comes to useful class features, and spell storing item definitely ranks among them. And at number 5, we have Reckless Attack. This 2nd level feature belongs to the Barbarian class and allows you to make every attack roll you make be made with advantage for that turn. However, in return, every attack roll made against you will be made at advantage until the start of your next turn. While this might seem like a big downside, it's actually an overall benefit for your character, because in taking hits as a Barbarian, it isn't as detrimental as other classes due to resistances they have for bludgeoning, piercing, slashing damage through their Rage feature. There's also the fact that you will most likely have more hit points than other classes due to the size of your hit dice being a d12, the highest possible hit dice you can have, as well as a decent enough Constitution score for those who want to make use of the Unarmored Defense feature, which allows you to add your Constitution modifier alongside your Dexterity to your armor class when calculating your AC instead of just a normal way of calculating it, which just adds your Dexterity modifier, resulting in a higher than average health pool suitable for tanking a lot of hits. However, even then, you do want to be careful when using Reckless Attack against multiple targets, as you don't want to leave yourself open too much and take 2 attacks from 3 enemies at once every single turn, even if you're able to resist them all. So while there's a bit of a trade-off when it comes to this class feature, it is still one of the better features on this list, due to the ability to increase your chances to hit on demand, and can work extremely well with feats like Great Weapon Master, which gives you a flat -5 penalty to your chance to hit something, but grants you an extra flat 10 points of damage whenever you do hit, as giving yourself advantage can really help mitigate this penalty, making this a very powerful combo for a Barbarian if they're looking to help maximize their damage. And the reason why this feature sits at the number 6 spot on this list is mainly due to the downside of making yourself an easier target for most other creatures, meaning this feature might not always be the best thing to use in some cases. But fortunately, the upsides of Reckless Attack tend to severely outweigh the bad, which makes this class feature very strong in spite of that weakness, while also getting this feature early enough to learn how to best use your Reckless Attack during earlier parts of the game where enemies tend to be on the weaker side of things. And at number 4, we have Reliable Talent. This is an 11th level class feature learned by rogues and is considered one of the strongest features in the game by many players. What it does is allow you to treat any roll of a 9 or below on a d20 when rolling for an ability check that you're proficient in as a 10 instead. This is a really powerful feature for a few reasons. The first is that rogues learn a ton of skill proficiencies starting at level 1. While most classes only select between 2 or 3 proficiencies, the rogue gets to choose 4 of them from a very good set of skills as well. Perception is generally the most commonly used skill check in the game, and having a good passive perception can help out a lot when detecting enemies that might be trying to sneak around the party, or noticing when something is off in the environment, such as a trap or a secret door made to blend into something. Insight is another good skill which can help you determine someone's true intentions or help detect a lie being told. Persuasion and deception are both great skills to have when getting yourself out of trouble or convincing a guard to let you into the king's palace. And of course you have sleight of hand and stealth, which are both amazing abilities for rogues looking to scout or pick locks. And while there are other skills you can be proficient in, these are some of the more common ones that players may choose due to how useful these skills can be over the course of a campaign. But what makes Reliable Talent truly shine is when it combines with the Expertise class feature, which allows you to double your proficiency bonus for 2 skills that you choose when you take this feature. While Bards can learn Expertise at 3rd level, and Rangers can learn Canning as an optional feature at the 1st level, which basically lets them have expertise in a single skill they're proficient in, rogues are able to take this class feature to new heights because of reliable talent basically raising the minimum number you can ever roll for your skill check. To put in perspective just how crazy reliable talent can be, let's take an 11th level rogue who has chosen sneak and sleight of hand as their chosen skill proficiencies. If we assume the rogue maxed out their dexterity score, they would have a +5 to sneak, and 11th level your proficiency would be a +4, which doubles to +8 due to expertise, since by then all 4 of your skill proficiencies you chose would be under the effects of expertise unless you use it on a different skill you have been proficient in due to a race or subclass. This makes your overall bonus to sneak around a +13, meaning that your minimum to roll normally is 14 if you rolled a 1. However, under the effects of reliable talent, you can treat that 1 as a 10, meaning that your minimum roll to stealth is actually a 23, which very few creatures can actually beat in terms of passive perception to try to see you. In fact, the earliest a creature can reach a high enough passive perception of 23 is Loop-Garou from Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, and the adult Topaz Dragon from Fizbane's Treasury of Dragons, which are both CR 13 creatures. And beyond that, only a handful of creatures of each CR level can actually beat your minimum stealth roll. And if you ever need to pick a particularly hard lock, you can do this very easily without much fail because the minimum you can ever roll to pick one is 23. Which brings us to the other reason why reliable talent is so powerful, is ability checks are the most common rolls you make in D&D 5e. So being able to pretty much never fail certain ability checks can really trivialize certain encounters to an unprepared or inexperienced DM. However, a more experienced or creative DM might be able to work around this in a way that still feels good to the player while also not feeling like a puzzle or encounter they worked hard on was for nothing. Your DM could create a scenario where you might have to sneak past a bunch of guards, but are positioned in such a way that even if you were to be as stealthy as possible, you'll always be in plain sight of them. The solution here might be to have your other party members create some sort of distraction, while you sneak safely to where you need to go in order to nab the treasure from a complicated series of locks. Perhaps the lock contains a treasure, is magical, and can't be picked by normal means. However, the key to unlock it is stowed away in a book somewhere that you might have to look for using your investigation, a skill you might not be proficient in. It takes you some time to find the book, but you notice it's rigged. Use your sleight of hand to easily disable the device and take the key, unlock the lock, and nab the treasure within just enough time for the guards to come back. This allows you to work with your party members to enable your skill set in a scenario that might have happened even without reliable talent, while still allowing the player to use their character for what they built it for, while also introducing them to or enabling some time-sensitive scenarios. However, not every situation will be this ideal, and sometimes you might just have to accept that locks aren't going to stand in the way between a rogue and their treasure. Regardless, the reason why this class feature only takes number 4 spot on this list, despite how insanely broken the feature can be, is because you learned this feature relatively late. And while you're able to use this feature quite often, there are just certain skill checks that aren't going to be relevant to you, and for good reason, since you want other players to have their time to shine as well. That being said, there are ways you can become proficient in every skill check, which just mostly involves multiclassing and building a very particular build that allows for this, in which case this feature might very well take your top spot on this list. However, because of how specific you would have to create your character in order to achieve this kind of power, it's usually not worth it unless you're going for a very gimmicky build. But it felt worth mentioning just how much use reliable talent can get you if you're really feeling up to it. And for a more combat-heavy campaign, this feature might not come up that much in the first place to really make much of an impact. And at number 3, we have a feature present in both the monk and rogue classes, Evasion, which is learned at 7th level for either of them. This has the simple effect of making it so that you take no damage whenever you successfully pass a dexterity saving throw, and only take half damage if you fail. This is another feature that is widely regarded as a powerful one, because it allows you to cheese many spells and traps by simply existing. This holds especially true for rogues, since your dexterity saving throw will usually be extremely high due to your primary focus and dexterity and your proficiency in it, meaning you should be able to pass most dexterity saving throws with little to no problems. And there's nothing quite like seeing the look on your DM's face whenever they decide to throw a meteor swarm at the party, only for you to walk out unscathed because you passed your dexterity saving throw to avoid all of its damage. And the reason this class feature takes number 3 spot on this list is because of how early you get this feature and how effective evasion is in practice. A lot of common spells require a dexterity saving throw, which include most, if not all, fire spells like Fireball, Wall of Fire, and the aforementioned Meteor Swarm, while most traps definitely require to make a dexterity saving throw if you accidentally trigger them. So there's little worry of taking a big hit if you mess up and try to disarm a trap, only for it to blow up in your face, since you'll very likely be able to avoid the damage altogether. And just the act of being able to mitigate even half of the damage you would normally take on a failed saving throw is enough to consider this feature strong, since it's just a flat boost to your overall survivability with no commitment to resources, which is why Evasion takes number 3 spot on this list. And at number 2, we have Aura of Protection. This is the Paladin class feature that's learned at 6th level, and grants you an aura within 10 feet of you that provides a bonus to all saving throws you and friendly creatures make, equal to your charisma modifier, as long as you're conscious. and at 18th level, the aura extends to 30 feet. Now, just like Diamond Soul, this class feature is a fantastic way of being able to add extra bonuses to your saving throws, with the biggest difference being that you can now also provide the bonus to your allies. With it being tied to charisma, however, means that you might not be able to see the full benefits of this aura, since strength tends to take precedent as the primary stat. But even a +3 bonus to any saving throw to make within 10 feet starting at 6th level is a very good bonus for helping your allies stay protected from the likes of slow or fireball. And while the overall benefits of aura protection are a bit smaller than Diamond Soul, since it doesn't scale proficiency like the latter, being available 8 levels sooner as well as providing a hefty amount of protection to your friends is enough to make this feature a fantastic choice for the number 2 spot on this list, especially considering the fact that it's always on. And at number 1, we have Action Surge. This is a 2nd level fighter class feature which grants you 1 additional action per short or long rest, and you can use this action for anything you want, including attacking using the full benefits of things like Extra Attack. This is partly why fighters are seen as a class that do nothing but make attacks, because Action Surge allows it to make so many attacks at once. And at 17th level, you get to use 2 Action Surges per rest, but can't use them on the same turn. And by then, your extra attack as a fighter allows you to make a total of 3 attacks every time you use the attack action. So if you use Action Surge, this basically gives you a total of 6 attacks for the turn. And if you happen to have the Great Weapon Master or Sharpshooter feats, and ways to give yourself advantage, such as through the use of the Samurai subclass Fighting Spirit feature, which grants some temporary hit points and advantage on all attacks they make that turn, then you'd be able to do a devastating amount of damage to any creature you hit as a result. But that's not all that Action Surge is good for. In fact, Action Surge is actually so good that even spellcasters are willing to dip 2 levels into Fighter just for this class feature, because of the ways that it interacts with spells. You see, there's no rule that prevents you from casting 2 leveled spells in the same turn as an action, as long as one of the spells you cast isn't a bonus action. Specifically, the rules for casting a spell that has the casting time of a bonus action state that you can't cast another spell during the same turn, except for a cantrip with a casting time of 1 action. Which means that as long as you don't cast any leveled spells as a bonus action, you are free to cast any leveled spells as an action. This is later confirmed by the lead designer of D&D, Jeremy Crawford, when he states that the rules on bonus action spellcasting only applies if you're casting a bonus action spell, while also preceding the statement with an example where he states that the rule on bonus action spells has nothing to do with Action Surge. You could, for example, use Action Surge and then cast Fireball twice. You could always follow it with a Hold Person spell, which paralyzes a humanoid creature. It makes it easier to land hits and crits with a Scorching Ray on the same turn to deal an incredible amount of damage, and that would be perfectly fine. However, if you were to cast Misty Step, a bonus action 2nd level spell which lets you teleport to a point you see within 30 feet in order to get away from a nearby aggressor, and you're planning on using Action Surge this turn, only then will you be restricted to using cantrips for both actions. Despite this, however, Action Surge provides an amount of flexibility that just isn't present in any of the other class features on this list. And of course, there are plenty of other classes that can benefit from Action Surge as well. Paladins can utilize extra actions in order to land more smites, and rogues might want to use the extra action to ready their action for an additional sneak attack when their turn falls to the next person in initiative, since sneak attack's damage is once per turn as opposed to once per round. It's kind of ridiculous how amazing Action Surge can be for so many classes due to the nature of what it does and the fact that it is learned at an extremely low level, that it may as well be a non-commitment in some cases, which is why this feature deserves its number 1 spot on this list. Alright, and that's the list. Do you have any favorite class features that weren't talked about in this video? Or have any ideas for future videos for this channel? If so, we'd love to hear about them down in the comments below. And take care.